Okay, it's been a while since I recorded a sermon, but I'm going to give it a try and see what I can do here. This is actually the sermon that I gave live last week on 11/15/20. And I'd like to begin with Matthew 25:15 and following. For it is as if a business owner going on a journey summoned 3 employees and entrusted the company investments to them, to one $500, to another $200, and to another $100, to each according to their ability. The one who had received the 500 went off at once and traded and made 500 more. In the same way, the one who had the 200 made 200 more. But the one who had received the 100 put it in a safe deposit box. After a long time, the owner came and settled accounts with them. The $500 employee presented the $1,000 to the boss. The $200 employee also came forward presenting the $400. After these two received their praise, the $100 employee said, "I knew that you were a harsh boss, expecting a lot, so I was afraid, and I put the money in a safe place. I am returning to you the original amount." But the boss replied, "Since you knew I was tough, then you ought to have invested the money with the bankers, and I would have at least received the original with interest." So the boss ordered the $100 taken away and gave it to the one with the $1,000. To all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. And then from Psalm 90, 1-6. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, or like a watch in the night. You sweep them away, they're like a dream, like grass that is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed. In the evening it fades and withers. All right, well, we've had a lot of ups and downs on the COVID front. And last Sunday I talked about how maybe we were seeing the beginning of the end. And now in the last 3 or 4 days, I've seen an awful lot that has come close. I've received texts from friends, and I've heard of other clergy and their spouses in the conference, and I think we're all feeling a little bit nervous right now, and so we don't know. But last Saturday, so a week ago, we had our annual conference, and there were 3 Bible studies led by Junius Dotson, who is, he's located in Nashville, and he teaches evangelism and other courses to the whole church, the National United Methodist Church. And I liked what he had to say, and I'm going to touch on a few of those things. But first, I want to say that in the past, I've been talking about how do we know that we are a healthy, vital church? We've been studying a book called Vital Vintage Church. And so I've been talking about some of those things. And I think Junius Dotson was asking, what are the characteristics of a vital congregation? And I'll give you a hint. It doesn't matter what the size of the church is. You can be small, 10 or 20 people, or you can be large, 10,000 people. You can be healthy at any size or unhealthy at any size, or anywhere in between. But the question that matters is, what is your commitment to grow as students and followers of Christ? Our job isn't to spoon-feed Christians the deep truths of Jesus for the rest of their lives. The group aspect involves having the tools, developing the tools, figuring out what we need to grow as disciples so we can grow, and then we can turn around and help others to grow as Christians. Healthy people develop healthy congregations, and healthy congregations develop healthy people. So if you followed that, Jesus started out teaching his followers, and then as he taught the followers, they turned around and helped others become disciples and followers of Christ. And then those disciples turned around and helped others become disciples, and so on. Are we the last generation in this church? Is it we're going to just throw in the towel and quit? It's too hard, and we're not sure how to do it, and so therefore we'll live out our lives receiving, and then last one out, turn out the lights. That's what it seems like in some mainline churches, or what they call vital vintage churches now. A Holy Spirit-led group of disciples together, and I mean together, they take risks to grow up themselves and help others to grow. Vital congregations know why they are followers of Jesus, and they know why it is worth helping others. What's our system? What is it that helps us to grow as disciples? What's at the heart of our growing to maturity, and how are we able to share our faith story with others? There are spiritual disciplines, I've talked about many of them, healthy habits that help us grow to be healthy Christians. What are your disciplines? How do you share your faith? It isn't about shaking a Bible at someone and yelling, "Get saved!" Discipleship and sharing faith with others is all about relationships. So how do we develop healthy relationships, loving others, and showing care for others? I think part of it is being able to talk about what God means to you. And this is why often I've said, practice with someone who loves you and tell them what God means to you. Share God's love with someone that knows you well and will not poke fun or laugh, but it's simply about sharing what you know. Do you believe in Jesus? What does that mean to you to believe in Jesus? Can we talk about it? Often it's been asked, what's the difference between a church and a Rotary Club? They both do good work. What's the difference? How is the church different from a community charitable group? In the middle of this pandemic, we can think differently about who we are and what we do. Who are we? What's central to who we are as Christians? What is especially worth keeping? And what have we learned in this pandemic? What might we let go of? I think that we were locked into a certain way to be church, and I think that in some ways it was not the healthiest. We couldn't see beyond it. We couldn't see what was real. We couldn't see what really mattered and what didn't. We said, well, it all matters. Let's keep all of it. And I think now we're beginning to think, what is worth keeping? Another question is, what is salvation? I don't want a Sunday school answer. Oh, it's about going to heaven and avoiding hell. Because I think salvation is much more than that. I think salvation is about healthy relationships. It's about showing care for each other. It's what we do each Sunday when we see each other, whether it's in person, whether it's on Zoom, when we call each other on the phone. What do healthy relationships look like? That is salvation. And we are working it out in the midst of each other. We're reaching out to people we might not even know that well. Oh, that's a scary thought. So someone might here say, well, I come to church because we're a loving congregation. Well, okay, so that's why you come. But what does it look like? Let's get down into the weeds and get specific about what that looks like. I would love for people to come to church early. And of course, I have to be disciplined to get to church and start it early too. But we can all contribute to that. And I would like people on Zoom to talk to each other and people in person to talk to each other when we're meeting in person. I would really like that. And so if you love the people at church, wouldn't you want to see them? I heard a story about a church that had been meeting on Facebook Live, and it was recorded. And they really liked it, and they didn't want to come back to meet in person because they really liked, it turned out, they liked having coffee on the couch in their pajamas and listening to the service and kind of consuming it like a product. Or one woman said, I love that I can listen to the service and do dishes at the same time in the sink. And so they didn't want to come together. But I have to ask, Are we getting to know each other? Are we forming community? Are we engaging in disciplines to be a community? Or are we consuming a product called Christianity? That's a hard question to answer, and we all fall into it because the U.S., if it is anything, it is a consumer culture. And it's all about what we buy, what we have, what we sell, what we use, what we shove into closets, what we take out. Yeah, we're a consumer culture for sure. But here we are, and we're able to use technology to meet online, and also we're able to meet in person, whether on Zoom or whether in person live. And as small as we are, we now have two congregations. We have a little one that meets in person, and we have a little one that meets on Zoom. Whoever thought our congregation would be divided into two? But we can do that. And for some people, it's extremely important to stay safe from COVID, to stay safe from flu in the wintertime. We're just entering the full-on flu season. And so maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing to always offer church on Zoom. But it doesn't mean that we should consume it as a Christian product. Instead, we should engage with each other and be community to one another. And we are restarting our phone tree. Be sure to ask for a list if you don't already have it, and I haven't sent it out yet. I'm finalizing it, but I want our phone tree to be working again. And I want you to print it out, and if you need help getting it, we'll mail it out. And I want you to put those phone numbers on your desk or by your kitchen or by your phone or somewhere that you'll see it often. And you might think to call someone. I wonder how they're doing. I heard they were having a tough time, and maybe I'd like to ask them, how are things going with your family? And then when you ask questions, be sure and listen. And be sure and do this with community members as well. We miss people in Davis because we're not doing the community suppers. And right now we aren't even doing community coffee. So let's call each other and let's find out how people are. I'd like to have addresses updated as well for people that might be too shy to call but would send a handwritten note. And I like to get cards, but I also love to have a handwritten note because the person was thinking of me. But my favorite way as an outgoing person is to receive a phone call. And I like even better to receive a video phone call. And that's going to become more common because I want to see the people I'm talking with. And so getting back to discipleship, intentional discipleship is creating community, checking in with one another. Intentional discipleship is a fancy way of saying we show love and care for someone else. So we can use the phone tree for a snow Sunday when we're meeting in person again. But I would love to hear from somebody, and I would love to call somebody. An email, just like just a card, is kind of impersonal. They're meaningful, but I really want the person-to-person connection. Of course, part of that is my bias. But in this congregation, we're all leaders. We can express faith and hope and care to other folks. So the man in the parable is going on a journey, the boss. Going on a journey, he gives 500, 200, and 100. The $500 and the $200 persons, they take risks and they double their money. That's pretty high interest rate. And the $100 person is afraid, buries it in the ground, hands it back. Now you could argue which one was sensible because the $500 and the $200 people could have lost it all. And then they would have gone to the boss with their head hanging and they would have had nothing to show for it. Whereas the $100 person would look smart. Here's the $100. But you don't want to look too closely at the parable. You really want to take a step back and ask, what's the main idea? And that's why it's so important to tell a story in your own words. So when you step back and look at the story, what you get is that it's important to take risks. How about that? It's important to not bury your talents, meaning your skills, your ability to reach other people, your ability to care, it's important not to bury that in the ground. And that's why we can grow as Christians and not say, well, last one out, turn out the lights. Instead, we're going to take risks to grow our ability to care for one another. So imagine talking with somebody. It might scare you at first. I know it still sometimes scares me as a pastor when I reach out to someone I don't know, someone in the community who's asked for a call. I reach out and I take the risk, even though it is scary. And even though I don't always get a good response, I do it. And we all do it as Christians. And so, what about trying new things? We've talked about giving weekly to the church to support it instead of only giving when you come. People are coming less and less to actual church. And so, giving weekly, giving automatically through the bank or through an app is another way to support the church. A church that is healthy and strong in terms of community does not have to constantly beg for money. Discipleship includes giving, and a strong church is about activities that also grow strong Christians. So it's about taking risks. And we might as well take risks because look at Psalm 90. Psalm 90 tells us that life is brief. It is like grass that lifts itself up in the morning dew and fades by evening with the heat of the sun in the desert. For 1,000 years in God's sight are like yesterday when it is past, or like a few hours in the night. God sweeps them away. They are like a dream. Given that life is brief, let's take risks to grow as Christians and to share that love with others. Amen.